A young Missouri teacher who is facing a slew of charges for sexually abusing a teenage student now has taken a plea deal, and the boy's father has also been arrested and charged for allegedly knowing about the abuse and letting it go on. We're going to dive into the shocking revelations of this story with an attorney who specializes in these kinds of cases. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Former Lakeway High School math teacher, 26-year-old Hailey Clifton-Carmack from Missouri, has pled guilty to sexually abusing a 16-year-old student. Now, this sounds a lot like the stories we've been covering. Here's where it gets a little bit different. As part of her plea, she has agreed to plead guilty to a felony charge of sexual contact with a student, very serious charge. But the other charges that she originally faced when she was arrested back in January of this year, including child molestation, rape, child endangerment, they were dropped as part of this deal. Right decision, bad decision, we're going to get to that. But give you a little bit of background on this story. We go back to December 2023, when law enforcement was alerted about the abuse through a confidential witness. Now, according to a criminal complaint, prosecutors believe that this sexual abuse occurred between November 1st, 2023 and December 23rd, 2023. Now, how did this witness know? Well, apparently, this person found out about the sexual relationship between Clifton-Carmack and the student when this victim showed the witness pictures of scratches on his back. Apparently, the markings were from when Clifton-Carmack had had sex with this 16-year-old boy in the driveway of this confidential witness's home. Also, this witness said that they overheard her on the phone with the victim saying, "I can send you money, baby." Now, before we get into anything further in this case, and there is a lot more to get into, I want to bring in attorney Christa Ramey, who represents claims involving children who have suffered catastrophic injuries due to sexual abuse or school negligence. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about this. The first thing I wanted to ask you was, what do you make of a deal like this? Because on one hand, very serious charge, but the other charges were dropped.
Yeah, curious about that. I also noted that the dad of this child kind of knew what was going on, and there was also some child endangerment charges with respect to the father. I wonder if anything materialized there. I didn't see that.
We'll get to that. We're going to get to that. We'll get to that a little bit more, yeah.
So yeah, I am a little bit surprised. I think maybe because of his age, being closer to the age of the majority, and a child of 16 years old, though, cannot consent legally. And, it is absolutely beyond the pale that teachers are still doing this. But pedophiles will put themselves into positions of trust with children, and that's just how they operate. So I think that I am not very happy about the lower charges, but that's what we're like.
So according to the Pulaski County prosecuting attorney, Kevin Hillman, he told people that she could face 4 years in prison. And this would be pursuant to Missouri's sex offender assessment program. So it's not like she's getting probation or anything like that. But if she's looking maybe at 4 years in prison, that's pretty significant with what we're talking about here. But at the same time, given the allegations and given what the former charges were, could somebody look at this case and say that's not enough here?
I think so. You don't serve those 4 years, as you know. And what you're looking at here is not one offense, but multiple occasions that she had sexual contact with this boy. And so, and had kids protect them at school to make sure that, no one would walk in on them. It was a whole, affair that was being kept undercover. I think that it's a little bit more serious than what we're ended up with here.
Hey, by the way, we really appreciate you following us for this story. And for that, let me take a minute to talk to you about something that could really help your life. If you're a business owner or maybe starting a business, it's called Odoo. It's a sponsor of ours. And Odoo is a free all-in-one business management software that provides you with a range of applications that helps with the day-to-day of owning a business. So for example, I'm the host and executive producer of a true crime documentary series called Prime Crime. You can check it out on our YouTube page. And say we wanted to charge for Prime Crime, even though we have no plans on doing that, I could seamlessly and for free build a Prime Crime website with Odoo and put a built-in checkout page on the website with very little effort. So easy. And right now, you can build your website too. The domain is free for the first year when you use our link odoo.com/LC Sidebar. Hope you can check it out. So I will tease this by saying I have a feeling why she agreed to this in a second, but let me go a little bit more into the details of this story. So according to the probable cause statement in this case that was from a sergeant, I believe a detective, it says, quote, during the interview, the confidential witness stated Hailey is too friendly with students and sometimes will dress inappropriately at school. When asked to describe what inappropriate was to them, the confidential witness stated she will wear tight or low-cut shirts to show off her, quote, headlights, and will wear light leggings that show off her, I'm not going to say it, it's a kind of an inappropriate term, but private area. Now, the confidential witness also stated that Hailey has openly discussed her personal life with the class and stated she has gotten in trouble with the administration for being too close with students. Now, Christa, I've covered a lot of these cases, unfortunately, recently. This said to me, is this grooming? Is this, you create this kind of comfortability with your students, you're kind of open with them? Is that typical? Do you see that in these kinds of cases?
Absolutely do. And these are things that should alert the school to this conduct. So when you see someone that is dressing inappropriately, a teacher that is spending a lot of time with children, being too friendly or familiar with children, driving them home maybe from school, giving them special treatment or favors, all of this stuff is what other people are witnessing that are her colleagues. And it is going on. The school is allowing it to go on. It's grooming that's happening right in their backyard.
Now, according to this document, this confidential witness, apparently the victim told him that he was the reason, meaning the 16-year-old, was the reason that Clifton-Carmack had gotten a divorce from her husband. And apparently that she wanted a divorce because her husband allegedly only wanted to do a particular sex act with her. I mean, I don't think that's really important to the conversation. It's just adding to this a little bit. And reportedly her husband filed for divorce in August of 2023, finalized the divorce the following month. They apparently have a child together too. And for me, I look at this, and I've seen this before, like that idea of living a double life, right? You see these teachers who are married, who are engaged, who have boyfriends, who have girlfriends. That part about it is always, I mean, what they're accused of and what they plead guilty to or what they end up being convicted of is shocking. But the fact that they lead this double life is equally shocking.
Yeah, I think that's no different than, well, they've got to keep that life undercover, secret. The pedophiles. I mean, even though the boy is 16 and maybe looks and appears like a man, he's a boy, 16 years old. And so you have to keep it undercover. And it is a double life. It's also a sickness. There's a reason for it. And there are, I don't know that it's a DSM-5 diagnosable sickness, but these people are very secretive and they're very clever when it comes to manipulating children and hiding it from the rest of the world.
And I've done conversations before about this, about are they trying to seek something from this child that they don't have at home? That's a separate discussion, and trying to make sense of it is a very tough job. But here, what ends up happening, right? What ends up happening? How does she get caught? So according to this probable cause statement, the detective then meets up with Clifton-Carmack, and she denies all the accusations, even saying she never had contact with this teenager outside of school, and she willingly hands over her phone. And the detective notes that she didn't have, quote, the normal behavior of someone facing the same accusations. And pursuant to a search warrant on the phone, the detective discovers this conversation between her and the teenager about their relationship. And it's been also reported that she sent him nearly nude photos. So Christa, now I can see why she made a deal. It probably would have been very tough for her to mount a defense here.
Very tough. No, I don't blame her for making that deal. I don't like that the deal was offered, is my point. Is my problem with it. Yeah, she made the deal. I mean, she's sending nude pictures of herself or nearly nude pictures of herself over basically the internet, over data to get to someone, a boy. This is, this gets into some really, bad areas when it comes to pornography and, corrupting a minor, and a lot of other charges could have been brought.
But does it surprise you, though, that so much of this, in so many cases, it's documented electronically? There's text messages, there are emails, there's social media messages. You talked about before how there's this need to keep it secret and lead a double life, but so much of this evidence is actually documented. It always surprises me as well.
Like the serial killer that keeps trophies from his victims, right? No, I guess I'm not surprised because I see it in my cases when I get evidence from phones and from school records and wherever I'm getting it from, I am oftentimes very surprised. You also do data dumps on phones. You can delete these messages, but they're going to be there. You just go to Celebrate and, download everything and it's all there. Instagram doesn't go away, and so it is there and they do save it and they go back and look at it and read it. It's part of their disease. I'm not surprised that the data is there. Surprised she handed her phone over so easily.
Yeah, she and she didn't lawyer up, right? She didn't get a lawyer. What did you make of that?
Just naive. I think that, as many times as all of us talk, ask for a lawyer, don't talk to the police. Doesn't matter if you're guilty or innocent, get a lawyer in the room with you. People know this, but yet they think that they're smarter than anybody and they can figure their way out of it. And pedophiles, these types of people are very narcissistic in general. So they think that they just got it handled. And so I'm not surprised that she did not ask for a lawyer.
So what happens? The next day, so this is now December 23rd, 2023, the sheriff's office gets a tip that she, Clifton-Carmack, is leaving town to go to Texas for the holidays, but she is planning to meet up with the teenager before she leaves. And here is where this story takes another bizarre turn, and you mentioned it before. The document reads, quote, "On January 3rd, 2024, I met with confidential witness number 2 in a recorded interview room. This following is a synopsis of the interview, and the full interview will be included in the case file. Confidential witness 2 advised me she had been over to the confidential victim's residence and had spoken with his father. According to confidential witness number 2, the confidential victim's father knew of the sexual relationship between Hailey and the victim, as both had told him of their sexual relationship. The victim's father relayed to confidential witness number 2 that Hailey and the victim have been in a sexual relationship and have used students as lookouts while they had sex during school, and that Hailey had been over to the residence before she left Missouri to go to Texas. When confidential witness number 2 advised the father that they were going to come forward with the information, he responded by telling her, 'They're going to do it behind my back, so I may as well let it happen.' He also advised confidential witness number 2 that he would lie for his son if he had to. After receiving this information, I went out and spoke to the father, who did acknowledge that Hailey had been over at their residence before leaving to go to Texas." Clifton-Carmack, she ends up getting arrested out in Texas, extradited back to Missouri. As for this father, who hasn't been publicly identified really, and that makes sense because you don't want to identify him because then you'd essentially be identifying the minor in this case, his son. Anyway, this father was charged with child neglect for allegedly facilitating, encouraging, allowing this abuse to go on. Christa, I gotta say, I don't recall ever seeing an allegation like that before.
No. I remember back in the day, high school parties or whatever, the parents are like, "Oh, we're gonna let them drink. You're gonna drink anyway. They might as well do it in front of me." This is a totally different take on that. I mean, I cannot even believe it. So I guess he was charged with child endangerment. The father was. It's unclear whether he was, that that entered a plea on his, whatever.
Would you like to know? Would you like to know what happened?
Do you tell me?
So, according to the Pulaski County prosecuting attorney, Kevin Hillman, he replied to People that this father's case is going to be on hold until she is sentenced, until this teacher is sentenced, I believe in October, because he has agreed to testify and assist the state if needed. What do you make of that?
Well, that makes sense then. So if the plea goes south, then he would be a witness and probably get a deal with respect to that in order to, because in the larger scale of things, she's the pedophile. They don't want this deal to fall apart. If it does fall apart, they'll use the father at trial to testify.
I will say, I think this is interesting. In his criminal complaint, remember, her criminal complaint said the abuse happened from November to December. In his criminal complaint, when it talks about child endangerment, they have identified the period from November 1st, 2023, all the way to January 3rd, 2024. Now, I would imagine that that's because if this teacher visited the home before she left for Texas, the fact that she's there and he's not reporting any of this, it doesn't, I would say it doesn't matter, right, that whether she had sexual relations with him in January. It's the fact that she's there, continuing this communication, continuing this contact, and he hasn't reported it, right? So his level of alleged criminal culpability extends to a longer period.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. That makes sense. Although, if they're not engaged in sexual conduct during that period of time, I don't know how it can really last that long. But it's the cover up, right? So I don't know that it makes it any worse for him or not, and how long you put on it. Basically, he has a son that he is not protecting. He is not, he's not turning her in. He's not doing anything to actually protect his son. And he's, a son apparently willingly doing this and wants his father to help him hide it. So he's given in to his son in that regard. This is child endangerment 101.
It's pretty sick allegations. Now, I'll tell you that Clifton-Carmack, currently house arrest, awaiting sentencing October 11th. One thing I wanted to ask you, Christa, you mentioned it before. Does the school face any liability here? Because the superintendent had indicated that Clifton-Carmack hasn't been with the school since early December. What do you take away from what the school's liability could be?
So a couple of things, and this is what lawyers will be looking at, that will be retained, I'm sure, on the son's behalf, is whether or not she had a history that they did not know about or that they did not learn about prior to her getting hired at the school. So if they didn't do the appropriate background checks, that would have revealed that she had a history, and I don't know if she does or not. But we talked about earlier was grooming. This is where a school is put on notice because of the conduct that they are witnessing, that their agents are witnessing. The other teachers, the other school employees are watching, this conduct of the student, the, provocative dressing, the spending extra time with him. I am sure that there is a lot of evidence of grooming that's not being reported yet because it just hasn't been revealed yet. I bet colleagues and coworkers saw a lot, and that should have put the school on notice. And the school would have been in a position to get rid of her, to turn her into the police, and to help this boy. But instead, they allowed the grooming to occur. That's how the allegations go, right under their nose. And this boy is harmed because of it. So that's how that is how the school is potentially at fault. And, I don't know where the mom is in all this. She would have to make that claim on behalf of the son because the father is in no position to be a guardian ad litem and file that claim on the son's behalf.
And I'll be very curious to see what happens to him legally speaking, and we'll see what the sentence will be for this former teacher. But Christa Ramey, thank you so much for coming on and breaking down what is unfortunately another disturbing case of child abuse in the school system. But thank you so much.
Anytime, Jesse.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.